what we have recently seen with the latest economic numbers is Americans' disposable income is going down. Now, obviously, the reason that is so distressing is because inflation is going up. So, in order for us to maintain the same quality of life, our disposable income needs to go up as much as inflation is going up. So, it's not even just flat. Our disposable income is going down. So, the reason it's going down is obviously because inflation is picking up. It costs more. You go to the grocery store and your grocery bill that costed you $100 last year now costs you $150 or $200. That's less money you have to spend on other things. That's what people mean when they say disposable income. So if you want to know why that's happening, well, it's happening, number one, because of all the money printing we've been doing, all the debt we have, but it's been supercharged because of the Iran war. The Iran war has caused, oil prices, to go up and down. And right now it's being manipulated, so it's down, but it's about to go back up. No matter what happens with the MOU, there's no way it can stay at the level it's at for too long. So we just got a new Fed chair. The last one was a guy named Jerome Powell, and the new one, who we just got put in, if you could bring up the next tweet, is a guy named Kevin Warsh. Now, what should we know about Kevin Warsh? Well, to introduce him, I think it's good to see the kinds of people that someone may be affiliated with. So you may ask yourself, who's he affiliated with?
Yeah, let me get that one. Sorry, that we'll do that. We'll do the people affiliated. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So the people he's affiliated with happen to be a common theme in the Trump administration. So he was named in the Epstein files, like as you guys can see right here. Of course, you have Donald Trump, Melania, Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, Paolo Zampoli, RFK Jr. made a small appearance in there, Kevin Warsh, who is now the Fed chair, and a long list of other people. So we don't have to go through all of them. We've done plenty of coverage on Jeffrey Epstein. So now that we know who Kevin Warsh is and the types of people he's affiliated with, and for those who don't know, J.P. Morgan was actually found, to be helping Jeffrey Epstein cover up a lot of his financial crimes. So he was very tied in to the financial world and what's happening in the overall economy. So the fact that Kevin Warsh is being directly tied to Jeffrey Epstein, I think does actually tell you something. So,
yeah.
So what has he done, since he's been appointed to this position? Well, what he has done, since being appointed to the position, is essentially make the process of the Fed even more opaque and less transparent than it was before. So under the recent Fed meeting, which is called the FOMC, the post-meeting policy statement, no longer includes the traditional detailed vote tally of who voted and how, with named reasons and dissent. So what they were voting on is whether or not to raise or lower the interest rate. So when the interest rate goes up, that's supposed to help rein in inflation. When the interest rate goes down, that's supposed to spur economic growth, but that can also cause inflation to pick up. So the Fed has a board of governors who are supposed to vote on what happens, and then the Fed chair comes out and announces it. So we used to get a breakdown of who voted what way before, so we could get a feel for why people are voting in certain directions. Now, and they're not giving us the breakdown of who's voting which way. They're just pretending everyone's on the same page. This is the reason we're doing it. I'm just going to list the facts, and I'm not going to give too much communication. And he's
so basically it's first order of business, less transparency. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Great. So now, like when we look at, all the other things, that he's been doing, I don't know if you got the other screenshots that I put in there. Yeah. Exactly. So they're just changing the way that they measure inflation. So there right now, several different ways they can measure it. And long story short, they're going to be going to something called trimmed mean inflation. So Trimmed mean inflation measures are statistical alternatives to core inflation, which is what we use right now. And so instead of permanently excluding fixed categories like food and energy, as it does, they sort all individual price changes in the index, which is hundreds of components, from lowest to the highest period. And then they exclude the most extreme outliers at quote unquote both ends, which trims like how much it is, and then they do a calculated average of the remaining middle components. So if inflation of fruit, for example, goes through the roof, and inflation for that is 200%, they cut that out, of the averages. So obviously, it means you're going to get a lower number than what you had before. And if you go to the next, slide, what you're going to see is that, the breakdown of how it is. I think these might have been, like a little bit. I don't know if I put them in the wrong order, but yeah,
Okay.
those are the different ways you
I
can
got
measure it. Sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
this was the order. So
Oh, that was
I
the order. Yeah,
think
sorry, I
so.
probably put it in wrong. So, but yeah, if you go to the next slide, this is essentially pointing out that in the latest, reading of inflation, May 2026, the headline was 4.2% using the current measures. If they had used the trimmed measure of inflation, they would have called it 2.3%. So
Hmm.
that means for the same period, they're cutting it by nearly half and pretending that inflation isn't happening. So, why is this important? If Trump wants to restart the war in Iran, he can do that and then pretend that it's not driving up the cost of living and gaslight all of us into thinking we're crazy. And yet, even if we think our grocery bill is going up, it's just because we're eating more avocado toast.
So let me get this straight, Jay. If you're not getting the results you want in these positions of power with the thing you're implementing on the American people for forcing on them. If you're not getting the results you want, all you got to do is change the definition of a word, and then
Sure.
it can create a different outcome. If you change that, so you change the definition of inflation to get a different outcome that fits what you want. Man,
Yeah.
where have we seen that before?
Yeah.
We see
They,
changing
they
definitions of whatever else, right?
Yeah,
Vaccines
did
or
the
anything
same
else.
thing with the shot. Yeah, vaccine used to be something
Yeah.
that stopped you from getting a disease. Then it became a therapy that lessens the consequence of you getting said disease. So
Right.
we're seeing the same thing again happen, like with inflation, right?
You
So yeah,
repackage it to
yeah,
fit the goal the outcome you want. It's
exactly.
reverse engineering. By the way, it's not real. It's not honest. You say this
Yeah,
is the outcome we want. So how do we get there? We got to maneuver some shit around, and then
yeah,
we can celebrate a win when it's not a win. And that's what he does with
exactly.
the Iran war in general. But yes,
Exactly.
this is how we
So
can
so
see
they're
it. Yeah.
calling it trimmed inflation, but what they should call it is manipulated
Yes.
inflation, because that's all it is. It's not telling you what the actual inflation is. They're just picking the numbers they want to show you, and then they're presenting it to you, but they
Sure.
give it a fancy name and call it trimmed inflation instead of manipulated inflation. So, it kind of feels like they're preparing us for what's going to happen when the war starts back up, and they're laying the groundwork so they could try to frame it, in the best possible light.
Yeah.
So,
All
yeah,
right.
so that's
So
what we're looking at.
next slide we have this we
Yeah,
talk about the non-transparent, the less transparency. It's not,
yeah.
it's definitely less transparent, right?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I kind of summarized most of
Yeah.
what I had on these slides, so we don't have to go through
Okay.
everything. But long story short, it's important we leave it up there so people can read it as we're talking, and it essentially just shows you that, like, instead of trying to do the right thing, Trump is doubling down on doing the wrong thing, but gaslighting you into thinking that he's doing the right thing. And this is what we've gotten across all of his administration, whether you're talking about vaccine policy and what he's doing for our health, whether you're talking about his foreign policy. So, the gaslighting is going to new levels. And it just means that even if a Democrat took office, like, obviously you and I don't think they're any better, but if you were someone who believed that Democrats were meaningfully better than Republicans, it's just so much things that the next person has to come in and fix back, to put it back the way that it was. So really, guys, there's never been a more important time to try to get involved in some way, shape, or form than right now, because where the country is heading in a very, very bad direction, guys.
Yeah. And, let's just keep perspective. And I'm glad we're covering this today, because we had, we knew Alan Greenspan, lived to be 100. He passed away a few days ago. And this is a guy who redefined the Federal Reserve being the thing that was going to call all the shots for every presidency. Just to be absolutely clear, that's the whole point of this position, this idea that you're just going to do whatever you want to do and every president has to go along. So I want to make the point that this isn't uniquely a Trump problem. We've always had this problem. I just think it's easier to see the manipulation and the less transparency now, because they have to fast track this, right, Jay? They have to fast track this, hold on to this economy as long as possible. So we're seeing these tricks and manipulations happening at a greater speed, but they've been doing this the whole time, because Greenspan told us that they can do whatever, the Federal Reserve can do whatever it wants. We tell the president what to do, and that's it. That's final, and that's what defines our policy, and that's what defines the stock market, the value of the dollar, and everything that we know to be a positive economy versus a negative one. But I think it's running its course.
It has a large influence on it. I wouldn't say it defines it by itself, but it does have a very large influence on it. So
yeah. And so this is why you even have a Federal Reserve, right? Because and they call, I love it, they call it that. Like it's not federal, and it's nor is it reserve. It's privatized, and it's
just as federal as FedEx.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
just as federal as FedEx. Okay, I think there's one more slide, but yeah, like I think you covered mostly this stuff, but this is all the ways it's not transparent.
Yeah, exactly. So, the main takeaway that I want people to walk away from with this segment is that they're going to arbitrarily pick what they want to include, when they're coming up with the inflation number. So anything that, like they're leaving out, they don't have to tell you why they're leaving it out. They're just going to tell you, oh, well, the price of oil went up to $200 a barrel, so we're not going to include that in inflation numbers. So that'll make the inflation number look very reasonable. So they don't have to explain themselves, and they're saying less than they ever have before, and we have less visibility into their decision-making process than we've had in a very long time. So it says to you that they are preparing for dark times, and they want to keep us in the dark to make sure we can't even effectively criticize them, because they want to hide the numbers from us, and they'll make us do a whole lot of homework, to figure out what's actually going on. And even when you present them with the evidence, they'll still just, it creates another argument that you shouldn't even need to have. Like, if we're going to argue about whether or not the Iran war is a good policy, and we can point to the inflation that it's caused, that is an easy point to make. Now, they're going to be able to pretend that inflation is low. And so on top of making that point, you have to explain to people how the inflation number has been manipulated. And what do you think they're going to call us if we tell them that they're lying about the inflation numbers? I know, conspiracy theory.
There it is.
You're a conspiracy theorist if you think inflation is higher than that. And of course, that's one step away from being labeled, a terrorist nowadays. So, like the way Trump is moving right now, pretty soon they'll say questioning inflation could also get you on a terror watch list, for all we know. So,
all right, I think that wraps up that one for now. We obviously like to stay on this topic, and you've been really on point on this for us, Jay, the whole way. And we're gonna need more of that, because I think we're counting down the weeks left before the entire globe is gonna the oil's gonna run. We have it was like less than 4 weeks. That's what we kind of gave that away. So we're gonna have a lot of chaos come down here real soon.
Yeah, over the summertime, the price of oil is gonna go through the roof. No matter what. Insane. If the MOU holds up, it's still gonna go up.
Yeah.
So
get those e-bikes now, guys. You're gonna need them.